Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, today I have Kyle Whitehill on the line. He's CEO over at Avanti Communications. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Adam. Real pleasure to be here. As you know, I'm in London now, and you guys are in California, so we're quite far away from each other. But great to catch up.
Fantastic. And Kyle, we got a lot to talk about today. So we're going to talk about bringing the internet to rural communities worldwide, and really at the end of the day, connecting the unconnected, why this matters from many perspectives. So we'll get into that and more. But before we do that, we're going to start with what we normally start with, which was what we call our Mission Matters Minute. So Kyle, at Mission Matters, our aim and our goal is to amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's what we do. Kyle, what mission matters to you?
Mission that matters to me the most is that the world is very divided economically. And when I took this job on 7 years ago, my objective was to try and rebalance as much as I could this access to connectivity. There's a wonderful phrase in Africa, which is educate a child, feed a village. I think that's the mission that matters to me most is helping connectivity to get to rural communities across Africa in particular, so that we can educate people.
Now, Kyle, I know you've been in telecommunications, and obviously we're going to get into what the connectivity and what bringing telecommunications to, or the internet to, these rural villages can mean to entire communities and ecosystems, really. But before we do, I want to go back in time into your history. I mean, you're old school telecommunications, like you've been doing this a while. So how'd you get started?
So my career kind of took two paths. The first one was after university, I joined L'Oreal, and I had a fast moving consumer sales and marketing background, L'Oreal, Diageo, and then PepsiCo. And in PepsiCo, I loved the company, loved the brand, really enjoyed my time. But I had this opportunity 25 years ago, which was to transition from consumer fast-moving goods into telecoms. And the advice I got from one of my colleagues at Pepsi was, look, we sell sugary drinks and do lots of exciting marketing, when actually telecoms will change the world. And I didn't understand what he meant until I actually came to the telecoms world. Because remember, 25 years ago, we were just phoning each other.
Yeah.
Here we are today. We can do everything on our phone, like literally everything. And so he was right. It has revolutionized the way the world communicates with each other and accesses it. So that was really my career transition, which I think I got lucky that I got great advice.
I want to stay in those early days a little longer. What was it like working, with Pepsi and some of these other brands back then when things were really moving? Like, what was that like?
I loved it. I mean, one of my party claim to fame is that in 1997, my kids were small then, and we were watching Saturday morning TV, and the Spice Girls came on TV on the Saturday morning. I'm sitting there bleary-eyed with three young boys. And I was like blown away. So, of course, I'm at Pepsi. I walk into the office on Monday morning and I say, look, we need to sign these guys. And the European marketing guy saying to me, no, they'll be one-hit wonders, no way. And I said, no, I'm going to sign them. So we were the first commercial partner back then, $250,000, first commercial deal with the Spice Girls.
Wow.
And the rest is history. Okay. So that stuff was really interesting for me, the power of brand, the how to communicate effectively and engage with consumers. Coke was really big into sport. Pepsi was really big into music. We had to own something because it was impossible to compete with Coke. So I think what I learned was about the power of the brand. My first real access to working with American people who are super ambitious, got big plans, and it's an engaging environment to work in with corporate America because people want to achieve big goals. And I think my experience in Europe had been that we're much more calm and reserved and less ambitious. So I love that part of the corporate experience with PepsiCo.
Yeah. What was it like? So go get into the transition point. So now you're going from, these consumer brands to telecom. Like, what was that like when in that transition period?
Really challenging because you've come from a world which I'd been familiar with. University, I studied marketing and economics,
Hmm.
through sales and marketing through that first part of my career. I knew what I was talking about. Suddenly, you end up in a technology environment where it's all about the network.
Yeah.
Talking about technology, people talking about network, which is not my natural strength. So, what I tried to do in the early days was to say to people, look, I understand why the network's super important, but actually,
Hmm.
from my perspective, it's what people are doing with the network is what they pay us for. So, I'm going to focus on what's the monetization strategy for a network and
Yeah.
not get too hung up about what does core network, radio network, what does that actually mean? Because I
Mm.
think people buy the service. They don't say to you, which base station am I going to be connecting to? They
Yeah.
want to know, how much does it cost? How many minutes? How much data? So I think that was really my transition, was to try and bring a more customer orientated lens into the company.
Hmm. And at what point did the internet side of things start to intrigue you? Like when did that take place? Like the
Yeah, so I
possibility.
remember it vividly, right? So I joined 2000 and 2001, and we were approached about having a GPRS data card. So
Mhm.
remember, at that point, the only chance you had of accessing your emails was to go sit in the office, hardwire into
Yeah,
the
like
network
an Ethernet or something.
there, right? And so they brought in this Vodafone branded GPRS data card, which was like, wow, what does that mean? Right, okay, slot it into the side of your laptop and you can download your emails wherever you are, as long
Yeah.
as you're picking up the GPRS network. Now, Adam, it was 15 minutes per email, right? It
Stop.
was 15 minutes to download an email. But at the end of the day, you are mobile accessing the network. But the
Mhm.
moment everything changed was when RIM came and presented the BlackBerry to us about
Mm.
2002. And I remember Mary Grundy was the account manager for RIM, the Canadian company, and she showed us the BlackBerry. And
Yeah.
we took it to our first customer, Goldman Sachs in Canary Wharf, and they just went mad. It was
Yeah.
just mad. They rolled out 15,000 Blackberries that year.
Wow.
Everybody had a Blackberry because it was quite right. It was an easy sell. It was, look, you sit in the train for an hour on the way home. Now,
Mm.
you don't have to sit in the office for an extra hour in the evening or the morning. You can actually be productive on the train on the way home. Wow,
Mm.
that was probably the easiest product I'd ever sold. And that introduced two concepts. One was BlackBerry Messenger. So suddenly we were all securely messaging each other. And
Jeez, I remember BlackBerry Messenger. Those
remember,
were good days. Those were good
BBM,
days. I miss them.
nobody could see what you were writing. Okay,
Hmm.
it wasn't in the network. So that was powerful. And then secondly was just this 24/7. And I remember meeting the founders of RIM, BlackBerry, and they were talking about how they were emailing during dinner and their wives were telling them off. And suddenly, I mean, we were all doing that because we were just like permanently connected. So that was the first time that I had a wow moment about the art of the possible.
Mm. And so now you're that I'm still thinking about BlackBerry Messenger. For all the kids at home listening, it was really cool back then. Thank you.
No, it was amazing. I
It
mean, I
was
can
the best.
still remember when they wanted me to switch from BlackBerry to iPhone, and they
Mhm.
were literally prizing the BlackBerry from my hands, and I was resisting the iPhone for years, going, "No, no, no, I can't live without my BlackBerry." I
That's
think now
funny.
it sounds mad, doesn't it? Because suddenly the whole Apple
You and me both. One of my buddies, they had an intervention for me. It was during Christmas, and I was the last person in my friend group around me that had a BlackBerry, and they did an intervention. Like grandma was there, everybody was there. They're like, Adam,
ecosystem.
we're today. So I'm like, what? This is like literally Christmas like day. And I open it and they're like, okay. And I'm like, all right, fine.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Don't be so dramatic. Yes, it was so hard, but obviously now that sounds really funny for everybody else of another age bracket that's listening. It's fine.
Of course.
So now, fast forward a bit here. I want to get into into what you're doing present day, and really with internet, and specifically bringing it into rural communities. Maybe first start off by talking a little bit more about like why that's important, and maybe some people don't even know that many communities don't have internet or don't have that availability.
So I've been in Vodafone for 7 years working in the UK business,
Mhm.
and I was a European executive. And one day the UK CEO came to me and said, look, you're ready to be a CEO in Europe next, but we need a favor. Can you go to India for 6 months? We just bought Hutchison in India. We're rebranding as Vodafone.
Yeah.
And they needed someone to go over and help the integration with Vodafone Group. So I went as Chief Operating Officer 2007. I'd never been to India.
Mm.
So to answer your question, I would never have truly understood the question that we're posing about connected the unconnected. What do rural communities really look like in India and Africa if I hadn't had that specific experience? I turn up in India day one and go like, wow, this is mad. I mean, it's an astonishing, wonderful, crazy continent.
Mm.
When I started to travel into rural communities in India where we were building cell sites, big rollouts, like big rollouts, you suddenly realized that the opportunity was not about what's the Dallas Cowboys score, what's the Manchester United score. It's not Facebook. It's absolutely all about the key issues for your communities. Number one, how do you generate economics? So how do you make enough money to feed your family every day? Number two, get your kids to school and get them connected to the internet from school.
Mm-hmm.
Healthcare access, there's vast distances to hospitals, so can you do telemedicine? And security, there's lots of terrible security issues across continents.
Yeah.
And nobody knows that something terrible's happened, natural disaster, security issue. And so it suddenly struck me at that point was, actually, I'm not really that sure about what the world's doing about it, but suddenly it became really important to me because I saw the real value face to face when you drove into a rural village in India or Africa. You saw people celebrating as the cell site went up, celebrating as the symbol came up on the phone and we're talking like $20 phones. We're not talking iPhones. We're talking about voice phones. That was it. And the joy and excitement of people in that village realizing what the art of the possible was, that really motivated me. So I went from India to Ghana in West Africa, same thing, and then ended up in South Africa, same thing. So I had this sort of 10 years steeped in actually physically living, working, and seeing what can be achieved by delivering access to internet.
Mm. And so now, as you're traveling through these, when does this concept of like what's next for these villages? What happens there? So you get there, they're opening up phones, but like what happens next?
So the first thing that happens is that people who are traveling long distances to find something out don't have to do that anymore. So let's say you're a farmer and you're growing mangoes in a remote village in Ghana.
Yeah.
You, once a week, have to get 20, 30, 50 kilometers away. There's no public transport. So we're talking now about walking, or maybe you're lucky you've got a motorbike, right? But you've got a tough journey to get to, let's say, the market town, because you don't know what pricing is. So you've got no idea how much anything is. You've got no idea how much you're going to sell your goods for.
Interesting, yeah.
Suddenly, the first step is you're going to phone someone in the market town and say, hey, should I come today? And what's market pricing? So suddenly you're empowered by having information that you just couldn't have got efficiently before. So that's the first major change you see.
Wow.
The second major change you see is that, and Kenya is a great example of this, where the culture of Kenya is that when people move from villages into cities, it's to generate money to send back to the family in the local village. And so there's a wonderful product called M-Pesa, and M-Pesa means that you don't have to take the money. You can transfer the money over the mobile network, actually save yourself 2 days, 3 days of traveling. People get the money instantly. So you just see this overwhelming set of enabling factors that allow people to live a much more productive and satisfying life. And I think that's the thing that you see very quickly is like, wow, okay, so you're 1,000 kilometers away and you just sent me $10 and it took a second to arrive. Wow, I phoned you and just saved myself 6 hours of traveling, which means I can do something more productive. So I think productivity becomes the first thing that you really see and buy into.
That's amazing. And think about that's life changing. So we might be thinking about it, but like that's life changing to save a couple day trip. Like that's more productivity. That means they could be working more. There's a lot of enjoying life, like better quality of living, just lots of things. How does the technology get into the technology component of this and satellites and really just how all of this works and how this is taking place?
Yeah. So where we've got with telecoms is you've got kind of three core networks. You've got the 100-year-old fixed network. Remember in the US, the old Bell companies, the
Hmm.
first sort of copper networks were built, and that was for voice and then data. That's evolved into fiber. So of course, even in America today, you still have enormous amounts of rural communities that don't have access to fiber networks. So that's the first thing to hold in your mind. The second one was, of course, mobile revolutionized the world 30, 40 years ago because suddenly we didn't have to stay at home or stay in the office. So
Yeah.
mobile networks arrived. They started in very developed communities, but then wanted to roll out further to access populations. So here's the first tension. The first
Mm.
tension is that the regulators in countries, FCC in America, Ofcom in the UK, say to the mobile operators, I want 100% geographic coverage.
Yeah.
Mobile operators say, no chance.
Mm.
We are going to get to 98% population coverage and we'll be good. And the
Mm.
regulator says, no, your license says 100% geographic coverage. So the problem is that fiber runs out economically quite quickly outside
Mhm.
of dense population. Mobile does exactly the same as you get to semi-urban to rural, and then is
Mm.
a disaster in ultra rural. Because if you take a village in Africa, you might be talking about 500 people. So how
Mm.
on earth can you build a $250,000 cell site? When
Yeah.
number one, very low population, and number two, people's revenue, the amount that they spend per month. In America and in Europe, maybe the average mobile bill is going to be $40, $50 per month.
Mhm.
In rural India and rural Africa, it's 50 cents a month.
Wow. Mhm.
Yeah. So now you've got a challenge, haven't you? So
Yeah.
less people, same cost, less people, and significantly less average revenue per user. So when
Mm.
I turned up in this job, what you kind of realized was that, hey, look, the logical thing is that my assets are in space. So my
Mm.
assets are agnostic to urban, semi-urban, rural, ultra-rural. My satellite just looks down and covers the entire geography. And let's take
Mm.
Nigeria as a good example. Big country, 250 million people, but all very concentrated into major cities. So when you look at northern Nigeria, they have zero network coverage at all. But my satellite sat there and is perfectly capable of connecting, but
Mm.
it's in 36,000 kilometers away. So from a technology point of view, what my satellite has to do, it has to connect a satellite dish. So
Mm.
the classic round 1 meter thing that you've seen millions of times all over the world.
Yeah.
To do that, you need to connect it to a building that's got power. So there's the next challenge, right? The challenge becomes about in rural communities, do you have access to power? Well,
Mm.
yes, fortunately, because India and Africa are very blessed by the sun. So solar becomes a way of powering that,
Mm.
becomes a way of powering it. And what you do is you basically just bolt that to the side of a building, you power it from solar, and now with a modem, you can deliver Wi-Fi across a 1 to 2 kilometer radius. So
Mm.
that's how it works. And then you can connect your phone. And what we'll do with a mobile operator is we'll pick up the traffic from that cell site and then we'll send it into their network. So you'll actually connect into the mobile operator's network, and then
Mm.
they're like, if it's Verizon or MTN South Africa, they're the guys that own the customer relationship there. So that's
Yeah.
how the technology works. And all we have to do is to make sure that we're at the right price, the right
Mhm.
connectivity, the right throughput to make sure people get a great experience.
Yeah. I want to stick on satellites a little bit longer here. I mean, everything in the news, Elon Musk, Amazon, like satellites, like we're hearing a lot about it. Like, where do you see that going?
Well, I love it because I think satellites, when I joined 7 years ago, was probably the sleepiest part of the industry, because
Yeah.
all the innovation was coming from, faster mobile networks, faster internet through fiber, a lot of technology applications. It was very, very fast, sophisticated, and innovative. And of course, the satellite industry was really seen as old, expensive, and sort of the last resort, whereas actually the industry delivers TV across the world, digital TV across the world. It delivers all of the maritime service, whether it's a Miami cruise or a super yacht in the middle of the Caribbean. It's doing a huge amount for the military all over the world, providing vital communications in difficult areas. So the satellite industry has always been very helpful to people, but always seen as a bit like old and a bit last resorty. What happened then was that Elon Musk turned up and said, look, you don't need to be 36,000 kilometers in space. I'm going to do it much closer to Earth, which means you'll get latency, and latency just being about, latency where it's how quickly does the information flow back and forward. So he brought it down to like a few hundred kilometers with his Starlink network. And what he's done is he really disrupted the industry that was kind of moderately kind of okay with where it was going, and forced every single one of the satellite operators to stare really hard at ourselves and say, hey, where do I fit in? I'm going to have to find a place to fit in, because Elon Musk is building this kind of world-class network. And as you referenced, Kuiper will be here probably in 26, 27. And then there are a whole number of other networks in LEO all coming. So I think the challenge for me and my colleagues in GEO is to stay relevant and stay confident about the fact that we can still deliver a very good quality service across a very broad geography.
Now, I want to get into really, so for Avanti, just to correct me if I'm off on this, but your core customer is going to be other networks, right? Like where you're kind of filling in the gaps for maybe some of their coverage. Am I off on that, or?
Spot on. So what we do is, so if you're a large satellite operator based in America, you've got a big fleet of satellites, but you have many global customer contracts. Could be an airline, could be a cruise, something like that, mobility. And you have a gap somewhere in your global network. And then what we can do is we can provide you an infill for like North Pacific or Tasman Sea, or maybe even in America today, you still have some areas. The route between Los Angeles and Hawaii is, as you imagine, a very busy air route. And so there's lots of capacity requirements there. So that's what we'll do. We'll contract with that customer to provide them an additional part of their network they don't have for themselves.
That's interesting. So that's how I'm now able to get my, I can watch movies everywhere now, right? When I'm in the air.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you for your service, because I need those movies when I'm in the air. Now I understand why. I'm getting a whole education on satellites today and telecommunications. I love this. So this is great, and I want to circle back to the benefit though, really. And so of course that's the B2B side of things, but like the benefit worldwide. I mean, this is obviously for my trip to Hawaii from LA. Great, now I get to watch movies. That's great, and I guess I'd say that's very surface level. Nothing big of my life is changing there. But for the rural communities that are now having access due to services like yours, and you empowering other networks. I mean, that's interesting. And so you said a lot in Africa, a lot of India. Is there any other spots or areas that are kind of on the radar?
Yeah, sure. So you've got a whole world of, let's call it Asia Pacific. So the Asia Pacific region is really interesting because you literally have thousands and thousands of small communities on small islands, whether that's in that Pacific region, the whole Samoa, Pacific Island area. Indonesia, places like that, where you have an enormous amount of unconnected islands with populations. So that's where I think Asia Pacific, that's quite a broad term, but it's absolutely going to be a real growth segment for a lot of people. And then I think the other segment is across the Middle East. But when we say Middle East, everybody immediately thinks of Dubai. Think about Pakistan, Afghanistan, a lot of those regions, again, where you have small populations and very, very rural communities that need to be connected to the rest of the country. So from my perspective, all the revenues in sophisticated areas, North America, Europe, as you'd expect, but there are 4 to 5 billion people now that still do not have access to basic internet services because they tend to live on an island. And I think the other challenge, Adam, is that as fast as we can build, the population of those countries continues to grow much faster. And
Interesting.
You look at the statistic for the population of Africa by 2050, the population of Africa now, I think, is 50% is under 16 years old. This next set of people coming through are going to refuse to accept that just because I was born in rural Ghana, that's not going to be acceptable for that group. Whereas the older generation kind of were born with no connectivity and therefore accept that's part of the challenge. But I think the young people in those countries are going to be very demanding around access to connectivity. They want to empower themselves. They want to be entrepreneurial. They want to be digital. So I think that's going to be a big drive for many governments in India, Africa, and Asia, is to help digitalize every community.
Amazing. Kyle, this has been great having you on the show today. I mean, I learned a whole lot. I'm sure my audience did as well. I have to ask, what's next for you? What's next for Avanti Communications?
To figure out this challenge around, one network company, Geo, and actually there's a lot of other networks coming to market. And what we've got to figure out is, do we decide to become what I would call network agnostic? And I like network agnostic because basically what that says is, if I turn up in a customer and I say, what do you need? I'm not trying to sell my network if it's the wrong network for them. So I think partnerships, being strategic with other people that are coming to market because I have good access to customers and countries. What's next for us is, what's our role in the next phase of satellite network rollout? And that, if any viewer, listener has an answer to that to help me, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to listen to opinions.
That's awesome. And speaking of the listeners, if somebody does want to follow up and connect, learn more about Avanti Communications or connect with you and your team, how do they do that?
Yeah, they can hit me on LinkedIn, Kyle Whitehill, or they've got Avanti Communications on LinkedIn as well. And we monitor all that stuff.
Fantastic. And for everybody that's listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put the links in the show notes, so you can just click on the links and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day I'm bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Kyle, thanks again for coming on the show.
Absolute pleasure. Great to see you, Adam. Thanks for listening.